So Dave, thanks for joining us today on The Lighting Coach. And it's a little different than what most people would think of in lighting, but how important is lighting in photography?
Absolutely. Probably the most important thing when I, look back at my time starting in photography, and people were asking, oh, what's the first thing you recommend getting, as far as equipment? The first thing I said was a flash. Like if you don't have the right lighting in the right moment, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And that's everything from, from a photographer standpoint, getting the right sharpness in the picture and the detail, to also just being able to kind of paint with light. And you paint with darkness in the same way. And it's the same thing you guys do with your lights. And I think you've spoken about that specifically, that you use the darkness to kind of, accent things in the same way you do with the light. So I put lighting right up there with, your ability to, have good equipment and composition.
Yeah. And so often, I think it's similar to lighting, where when a lighting designer starts off, all they're concerned about is like fixtures and equipment. And they're not looking at the more important, the subtleties that lighting can bring and what we're actually doing in lighting. One of the fascinating discussions that I had with a photographer was talking about lighting a statue and taking pictures of statues. And what was so interesting to me is when they're providing lighting on a person, they're not just putting the same brightness on their face. They may be hitting one side a little softer than the other, creating shadows. Talk about that a little bit. Like when you're you're skilled in doing video work, photography, you work with people a lot, skin tones can make a big difference. Or in lighting, we talked about that. We had a photo shoot doing that, but how do you work with that? Like when you're looking at, say, taking a great photo, whether it's, nighttime work like you do with me or in your full-time job and you're looking at the lighting, how do you determine what makes good lighting for your photo work?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of the biggest things you're trying to avoid is things looking flat, because, oftentimes we see things, it's a bright day, everything looks flat, but when you can add in some contrast in there, you can add in some different looks, then it's a little more intriguing. It captures your eye a little bit better. And so that's something I'm looking for, is some contrast, some darkness, painting a little bit with, for people specifically, I'm looking for, doing some modeling on the face so that you can actually see the dimension of the face. If it's flat, it's bland and it's boring. And it's the same thing I think we experience with doing night shoots with Dayloom, is we don't want, just a flat image. We want to be able to see the intricacies of, where the light is casting a shadow, a soft shadow, hopefully. Or where it's not engaging with the light, but it's being, something else is being enhanced in the process. So I think the value of being able to kind of paint with light is being able to see things in a different dimension. It's kind of where I'd leave it.
So contrast and shadows aren't your enemy.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. You're actually trying to use that. Right. And we talk a lot in lighting design about using light to direct the eye where we want to bring somebody's attention to. Is that the same thing you're doing in photography?
Yeah, absolutely. And, even in the post-production side of it, we're doing the same thing. When I take things into Photoshop, if I'm, for instance, if I've got a kind of an active scene behind me, sometimes I'll do something many of you are familiar with. It's called vignetting. And it's something that naturally happens inside a camera if you're, outside the scope of your lens, your crop. And people started using that in, Photoshop to basically focus the eye. And so I'll use basically darkness around the edges to focus the eye on what I want to see in the center. And the same thing could be done, inside of Dayloom lighting for houses.
Yep. Is to be able to actually use darkness and not look at it as your enemy. Because so often, when I started in lighting, somebody thought that, commercial lighting, like they would do on model homes, where you put two giant floodlights and you just blast a house. It has light on it.
Right.
But it's the same thing as the lighting we have when we're doing a photo shoot, that you're not just blasting something with light, but you're actually adjusting the light and adjusting the color temperature, the hue, the brightness, everything like that.
Exactly.
How important is quality of light? Is that something that...
Well, quality of light and color of light, you get competing colors, in video especially, and you're gonna have a lot of problems because you start getting, with skin tones, if you're talking about people, You get weird color skin tones. People start turning orange or
To red face.
wouldn't know anything about that.
Why is
And
your face so red?
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so color of the light and then the quality being consistent. You know, everybody's gone to Lowe's and, you know, bought some, you know, some lights and thrown them in there. And recently I've noticed some LED lights I put in there, you know, kitchen or something like that, all the same pack of lights, put them in there, and one is just slightly different. You can see it, you know, it's a little bit more blue or it's a little bit more orange. And it's frustrating. You don't, you know, that's not what you want to experience. So you take it out and throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, consistency in the lighting, color, and it can make a big difference for sure.
Yeah. And how did you get into photography?
In high school, it was just something that kind of intrigued me. My mom was into photography, and so I just kind of started dabbling in it a little bit, and then went off to college thinking I wanted to be in more video, and so I did that. Went that route, and then got back into photography shortly after, sort of doing both now.
And you went to Virginia Tech.
I did go to Virginia Tech.
What's the football games like?
Amazing. They've changed a little bit since the time I was there. I was there in the Michael Vick era, which was exciting and fun. But you know, hopefully we're on the upward swing. We'll see.
Best opening in college sports, though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Lane Stadium's amazing.
Yeah. So what did they prepare you for with photography and taking that at the college level?
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn? What were the big takeaways you got? What were your big influences?
I think honestly, I learned more from experience than from classes. You know, especially nowadays with the cameras that we have, where you get instant feedback. You know, I started off in film. You know, where it's literally film, and you know, you send it to CVS, and they give you a print a week later, and you say, "Oh, well, I didn't do that well. What did I do? I can't remember." But now we have the opportunity to kind of immediately understand what we did wrong, and that's the kind of feedback that you need in order to, you know, get a good result in the end. And I think that's really the only way that we can do the kind of shoots that we're doing right now for Dayloom, because, you know, it took a series of kind of messing up and figuring it out and figuring out what the right combination was in order to get the right light at night. You know, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, and it's a different skill set than just regular, you know, portrait studio or something like that. So.
Well, we'll talk about that. I went through a lot of photographers, and it's amazing. Everybody's like, oh, I could take a nighttime shot just the same as a daytime. What would you say if, say, we have somebody listening who hasn't gotten great photography of their work, which I'm a huge proponent. If you want to showcase your work, the best way to do it is in photos or have a photo album. What would you say you would instruct somebody if they're interviewing someone, they're looking for a photographer?
Sure.
What would you have them ask, and what would you recommend? And then what would be some tips that you would have for a photographer just going out and getting started?
Give away the secret sauce, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. For someone that's trying to hire a photographer, I think you want to look for somebody that, first of all, understands composition. The good thing about composition, you know, we're shooting with cameras nowadays that you could enlarge it and put it on a bus. You know, we've got so much resolution to work with that you can fix a little bit of the composition in post. So as long as you're like 90% right, then you can fix the rest. So that's good, but you still have to be able to see that in post. You have to know what looks good, and it gets a little tricky at night being able to see absolutely everything on a little tiny viewfinder. So there are fixes that take place as far as composition and the post-production. But finding somebody that, you know, they can show you, you know, some of their work, you can see that their compositions look balanced, that things feel just right. I mean, it comes down to, you know, kind of feeling with a lot of it, you know, and whether that's, you know, that there's science behind it, but, you know, a lot of it is what it evokes, you know, in you personally as you look at it. Somebody that has experience shooting at night, and if they don't have experience, they can easily learn, but you want to have them learn on their own a little bit first before they not pay for it. So, you know, when the idea came up to me to shoot for you, I hadn't done much night photography at all. And so I spent a series of evenings going out and shooting and figuring out what the secret sauce was to make it actually work. And so, you know, you want to find a self-starter, somebody that's willing to go out there and, you know, figure it out, not on your time, and then go out there and produce something great for you. As far as the photographer themselves, it takes a lot of shots to make one good shot. So I'm shooting a series of shutter speeds in order to get the highlights and to get the lowlights. And then I bring that all into Photoshop to actually see what we're seeing in real life, because the camera can never capture what our eyes are capturing. So I want to make sure we're seeing what is actually out there. But at the same time, the camera is going to take a few more steps to get there. So I'm shooting, sometimes as long as, 30-second exposures, down to two-stepping it down all the way to, a 1 second or a 2-second exposure. And then bringing them all together. And, fortunately, things like Photoshop and Lightroom allow you to do that in a pretty seamless way these days. Yeah, I think those are, kind of some of the basic tips that I would, throw out there.
So you talked about composition. We use that all the time in lighting. How do you define composition? What do you mean by that?
Balance. When you look at an image in photography, there's the thirds rule, where you want things to, be balanced within that third, within one of the thirds or whatever, So when it comes back down to the feeling, when you look at it, if it feels off, it's probably off. It feels uncomfortable, then, it probably is. I think other thing I meant to mention earlier too is when you're looking for a photographer, you want somebody that doesn't look at something the same way that everybody sees everything, if that makes sense. So everybody looks at everything straight on. You look at a kid, you look at him, you're shooting down at him. Yeah. When you're shooting a kid, you want to get down on their level, because we don't see the kid from that level very often, right? So you want to get down low and you want to maybe shoot it up, because that's a perspective that not everybody sees. It's the same thing with, shooting a house. You want to find the perspective, the angle that not everybody's going to see every time, but can appreciate. If you can go higher if you can find a hill to stand up on and zoom in, or if you can, go low, back of a truck bed. I might have done that once or twice. So finding an angle that is complementary is not just, unique and different. It's, sometimes it's more captivating because people they don't experience that angle outside of, you doing something different with your process.
Yeah. And one thing that we focused on 6 years ago, we sat down is talking about feature focus. I think we've won a couple of awards at AOLP from the feature focus. And that's really getting into what you're talking about, where so often we just take a photo of the front of the house and get that 5 minutes before dusk, and that's all we would do.
Yeah.
And so the sky's blue, the lights are just starting to shine. But obviously there's a huge transformation that happens from the beginning of dusk till full darkness.
Right.
But you've done very well having an eye for picking out that feature focus, at the bench scene or the little statue. How do you go about, you talk about feeling, how do you go about like picking those scenes up?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things, you're just kind of looking for something that's unique. And I think you guys honestly do it for me, because you find those benches, or you find, you just cast a little bit of light on it, and, little scenes I've always kind of thought of as you guys picking those out for me to be able to, get a nice shot, or for the, a customer, obviously, to be able to focus on. I think you've spoken about, a bench or a chair that was kind of far away that nobody ever sat in. And, a client was like, why are we highlighting that? And then turns out, they love just sitting there and looking at that scene. It's something they experience. So as I'm walking around the house, I'm looking for those, those little unique things that it's the same thing as you shooting from low or shooting from high, or, shooting a different perspective. I'm looking for something that's different than just, the house, something that the customer can look at and say, oh, this is more than just, security lighting. This is something that, kind of evokes some emotion, like, and, enjoy, sitting out on my back deck at night and looking at what we have in our yard. And sometimes it brings a little sense of calm too. I think if you sit at night and you just see the bench out there, or you just see, the garden, everything else is dark, and it's just kind of peaceful, And so I think looking for those little tiny places where you can highlight is an opportunity to kind of present a little piece.
Yeah. You just had a recent project. I was really proud. Danny has been working with me for about 3 years, is learning lighting design, and he had the shed. I don't know if you remember this.
Yes. Yeah. Love that shed.
And you think about it, it's just a shed in a backyard, like not that exciting.
Right.
But with your photography and the lighting, What drew you to that scene?
Oh, I mean, I thought the lighting did it all. Because first of all, the shed had this interesting kind of sloped roof that, it almost looked like something out of a fairy tale. And so that captivated me at first, and then I saw the huge tree that was next to it. The way that it was, the light that I think was it a downlight that's coming off that one? It was casting the light onto the shed. And so all of that just immediately said, this is a shot here that I have to get. And it's one that I love. It's a fun one. And that's another one that from the house, I'd be sitting there looking at that, they're like, oh, it's cool. We got this nice place that we can enjoy. So yeah, at that point, it was just finding the right angle on it and, seeing what I could make of her.
Yeah. We talked a little bit that I've ruined you for lighting.
Yeah.
So what did you mean? You said, was that at a friend's house and what did you do?
Yeah, I immediately started looking for, I was like, well, I mean, this person had, 100 acres, beautiful home site. They've done a tremendous job the last 5 years, just, doing all the things. And, they've got the sport court and the pool and, looks out onto, a big lake and, all these things. And I was like, well, so they got all this, they got to have lighting, right? And so I started looking, I was like, oh, there's some lighting. So I asked him about it and he's like, yeah, we had our landscaper do it, which is, great.
Yep.
If they're putting in the right thing, then, hopefully they're getting the right result. But,
Was it?
it was not what I was hoping. It was not Dayloom Sterling lighting, but
A little underwhelming.
yeah, everywhere I go now, I just constantly am looking at, lighting of houses or of things.
The lighting nerd comes out and most of my lighting friends all talk about it. They walk up to every property and they're just picturing like how they should light it, what it would look like.
Yeah.
And being in photography, you get what we do at such a high level because A, you're taking pictures of it, but B, you understand lighting and you talk about the emotional connection. What do you think that is? Why do you think there is an emotional connection to lighting? Philosophical question.
Yeah. Taking me to different levels here. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I think that it's just, the right lighting, the lack of lighting brings a certain amount of intrigue and, makes you think a little bit, makes you ponder a little bit. And maybe it just kind of sends you in a space of where you can reflect a little bit and consider, life, all the things that it brings, So maybe it's just one of those things that brings you some peace.
Yeah. And in photography, sometimes you don't want that. You're not looking for peace. You're looking more for a dramatic look.
Right.
Do you ever use lighting in that instance where you actually heighten it or brighten it or more contrast, less contrast? Do you ever do that in your photography to create more drama?
Yeah, sure. And, some of that will come down to, finding the right angle in order to capture the light coming down on, say, the shed or something like that, the different, more dramatic spot. So, yeah, you can certainly, heighten it. And then, in post, you can do a certain amount of, without losing the, integrity of the photo. You can do a little bit of that with, again, I always like to bring it back to what I actually saw in real life. So as long as I'm in that ballpark, then I feel like I'm safe to, adjust things slightly. But yeah, you certainly use light and dark to try to elevate things too.
Mm-hmm. That's what with post-production, AI, everything that's come into photography, you can make things look tremendously different than what they look like to the eye.
Sure.
Where do you fall on that? You mentioned that you talked about it a little bit, but that's not the direction you're going in.
No, I mean, AI has its places. It has its place. And there's, there's good uses for it here and there. It's not something that I use in photography for you guys. It's certainly something that, you could take a scene like this where we're doing a podcast and you could, delete something out of the background easily enough and AI could create a better scene. We could be over top of a mountain, whatever you want. That's kind of fun. But, it's kind of parlor tricks. It doesn't have a real use yet. I'm sure it will find its real use. But, I'm not using it in that way. It still also has that kind of, when you're talking about people specifically, has that fake look to it, cartoon look. So it's not there yet, but it's revising itself every day. So, yeah.
Getting very nervous. Yeah. But that is an important aspect to look at, is like we're trying to capture what the eye actually sees. And a lot of times you just take a photo and it's like that spot looks brighter in the photograph than it does in real life.
Yeah.
Where you wouldn't know, it blends more, your eye blends it better than the camera does. So that's always something you're working on, is, trying to capture what we actually created and what we saw in the photography. So we talked about science that goes into photography. Sure. And then the artistry that goes into photography. One thing that we talk about in lighting is the same thing. It's science that goes into the luminaire, the fixture selection, CRI, all that is the science side of it. But then there's the artistry side. What do you see happening in photography in the future? Is AI stealing all the jobs? And
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is like, I don't think AI can, I mean, there's a certain element that they will steal. Some people, stock photography, people will just, create it themselves, through Photoshop and just generate it. That's fine. As there's, anything personal, that's not going to go away. Anything that is specific to or unique, like a home, or, that somebody can identify as, unique, that can't go away. It's the same thing, the two of us sitting down, I'm sure there's an AI program that could sit down and make a video of, something that looks like us talking, but there's still a backbone where somebody's sitting there typing it in. And I don't think that we're going to lose everything to AI, but I think there'll be a big element of it in our future, and it'll be harder and harder to tell what's real and what's not real. And that's probably the part that I like the least, just because it kind of discredits, it has the ability to discredit like my work, because you might say, oh, I could generate that with AI. Why would I bother with you? That kind of thing. But I don't know where it's going. Obviously AI is a part of it, and it's just a matter of using it the right way to make it useful, and not a crutch that destroys it. You're right. Yeah. So.
And on the artistry side, I think that's the hardest thing to teach anybody, even trying to bring a new photographer in, is seeing that angle, how you're going to make those little adjustments that really make the scene. How long do you think it took you to become a really like your level of photographer? How many years of experience?
I feel like I'm always learning, I think you have to have that perspective in anything you do, but in photography, especially with the technology, as it changes, you're learning, you're figuring out how to best use the tools that they're giving you to elevate your product. As far as the fundamentals, the composition, the understanding lighting, understanding f-stops, understanding shutter speeds and things like that, really understanding it, took a while. But I think the composition element is kind of innate. Like if you can learn it for sure, but a lot of people just have it. Like you look at something and you know how to compose a picture immediately. And there's, there are kids that can shoot better, than a lot of adults, just because they know it, when they see it. Yeah, I think some of it's just ingrained in you. And, usually that means you're going to be more bent towards doing that anyway. So it all works out. But, and then a lot of it is learned.
So in our industry, there's a lot of lighting designers who just naturally have a good eye for photography and have gone into photography. I think I have a good eye, but I didn't want to. I took some classes, and just this is a lot of work. What would you say to somebody if they're on the fence going like, should I buy all the equipment and do my own work, or find somebody that specializes and does that? What would be the pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly, I think, knowing how to do it yourself as, as an owner, especially if it's a small business, there's always value in that. But I think at a certain point, once your business grows, you want to be able to hand that off. I think not because you can't do it as well as somebody else, but because there's going to be other things that will occupy your time, so you can do those better. But at the same time, I think having that experience and having that knowledge of what it takes will make you a better owner, in the sense that who you're going to hire, what you're looking for, and you can also relate to that person when they're doing their jobs. The downfalls, what's going to be in the way. So when you're setting up for a shoot, hey, let's work around this, or hey, it's a windy night, we're really not going to get a lot of great stuff because the shutter speed, the leaves are just going to be going crazy. So you say, let's can it. So it gives you a sense of what to be aware of, and I think it's valuable to know.
But it is learning an entirely different craft.
Yeah.
It's like taking on a new position, which we always say every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So
Yeah.
what about the equipment? What do you think? How much have you invested in equipment?
Sure. So
More than you care to.
yeah, I don't know I could name a number, but I mean, you can get away with, a $2,000 camera and $1,000 lens and start. I think if you want to be getting those interesting scenes, you want, something, you kind of want a long lens on occasion because you want to be able to shoot from far away. So you get some nice bokeh in the background. So you have like a 200 millimeter lens. You want, a 70 here and there for some medium shots. And then, for the wide stuff, you want at least a 24 millimeter lens. But if you can get something that's, 14, then each one of these is adding cost, obviously. And the better the lens, the better the glass, the more cost. So you could easily spend as little as $3,000. You could easily spend as much as $15,000. Just kind of, having fun with it.
Do you have a brand?
I have a brand. I'm a Sony guy.
Sony, that's unusual.
I started off as Canon.
Okay.
But in video, we were all Sony, and so I kind of converted to Sony, and they were just starting to get into the mix. So I kind of converted to being a Sony guy. So I'm all in with Sony, but it's just a familiar thing. I would go back to Canon if I was going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, what's the other big one?
Nikon.
That's it. I bought an Olympus back in the day. I was like,
Yeah.
dinosaur real quick.
There you go.
So one thing that's interesting is the small world that lighting is. You went to high school with a lighting designer as well, Peter Brown.
I go to high school with him?
Is that where? How did you?
Church. I knew the church. Yeah.
Okay.
For church. Yeah.
All right. So he's a good guy down in Raleigh. So
Peter Brown's great. So his wife, I grew up with at church. Like, I've known her since she was, little girl.
Yep.
So I was a little boy.
Yeah.
That's the for kids.
Yeah.
So I've known her much longer, but great guy, and he's doing some good work down there, I hear.
Yeah, he's doing good work, coming along and really, really progressing. And every time we post a photo, he always has a comment for you. Now, one thing that I'm huge on is light quality. I talk a lot about CRI. Do you feel looking through the camera, the old saying is cameras never lie, even though I think we do sometimes.
Yeah.
Can you see the difference in light quality in the images that you're shooting, or is it just my eye that I just get hypersensitive on it?
When you define light quality, would you be saying, how it falls off, or just trying?
We look at CRI as our big thing, and the RFRG and the saturation, and like an 80 CRI versus a 97. 99.
I'm not sure that my eye would pick that up the way that yours does. I'd probably need to sit down and look at the difference of them, and I could probably point them out.
And you've only shot ours, so you haven't gone in.
Yeah, I actually did that stuff.
We did the one. We did the one house that we did the case study on, and you did see the color shifts on different sides of the brick and everything. Well, a fun project we did recently was lighting on your property.
Right.
So you had lighting. So when you moved in,
I had lights.
Yeah.
I had things on the ground.
Did they ever turn on?
I had one light that would turn on, and you watched it extinguish itself.
With wire melted.
Yeah.
So we did a series. Now that you have landscape lighting, is it something like you pull up?
Oh yeah,
You could see it, and it just makes a huge difference.
Sure.
Yeah. So the appreciation of seeing lighting on your own house and seeing what landscape lighting does, and now we got the back to do at some point.
Yeah. My kids love it. It's fun for them to experience it, and they could stay up later to see it. So that's sort of exciting for them. But wasn't sure if my wife was totally on board, but she loves it now. So I think it definitely is. It's been a good thing.
You ever just turn it off and pull it in just to see, like, oh,
I haven't done that yet. I should do that. Yeah.
And it's always one of the things I get calls of, like the first time that like GFI trips and the lights don't come on.
Yeah.
I got a call actually yesterday from a friend that we did lighting for, and she was like, my lights aren't on. This looks terrible. It's like, you just get used to seeing it as the lighting portrays it.
I can see that.
Well, wrapping everything up, obviously we've had a great career in lighting, with lighting design and photography. I wanted to bring you in just to help people out who are looking at how to get good images.
Sure.
and then how to, find a photographer in their area if they don't have one currently, whether to get into photography themselves, and how long would it take somebody to become a really great photographer?
A night photographer specifically,
Yeah.
or so I think if they have a background just in photography itself, you could turn that around in a matter of weeks or months. Because all the elements are there. You just have to learn the science behind what's going to make a good composition, and you have to be willing to take the time to then take it into Photoshop and play with it and get the reflection of reality that you want. So that can be quick if somebody's just starting out, like
With me,
yeah,
getting the camera.
just going out and buying a camera. There are a couple of good books out there. There's a guy named Scott Kelby who has, he's got tons and tons of stuff, but he's got some beginner's books that I read through, I don't know, over a decade ago. And some of it's good basic information to know, but it helps you understand all the things behind how your camera works and how it interacts with you in your actual process of taking photos, and then also things like composition, so you actually understand why things work and why things don't work. So I'd highly recommend anything of Scott Kelby, but specifically I think it's like a 5 series of books. They're small books, but they're great for, you could read them on airplane flight, just sit there and troll through them. That's a good resource that you could, pretty quickly turn around some good photos after kind of absorbing that.
Well, I appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely.
This is always fun. We finally got you in front of the camera.
Begrudgingly.
Begrudgingly dragged you into it, but I just think it's so fascinating how closely related and why so many lighting designers have just gravitated towards photography, because they're seeing the world in the same way and seeing the impact lighting has. So appreciate all the photographs you've taken over the years. It's a little fun we've had working together. So, thanks for joining us today on The Lighting Coach.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to, continue to take photos and enjoy the wonderful work that you guys do.
Thank you.